Welcome to CPG Vibes. No scripts,
just chat.
I'm Alex Baer.
And I'm Wade Yenny.
Each episode is recorded live, and we talk all things food and beverage, and so much more.
Feel our vibe and search for CPG Vibes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and make sure to give us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to sponsor our show with your product or service, email us at cpgvibes100@gmail.com.
Now, let's vibe.
All right. Welcome to episode 170 of CPG Vibes. Hope everyone is doing well out there. We're on a fine Friday here. We got two topics that we're going to be talking about, probably in no particular order. And there's a lot of different random shit in between that we're going to be making up as we go, because that's how we do the show. UNFI system outage and updates on that. We'll talk about that. And then we'll also be talking about trade show tips from Wade, and I'll try to do a couple tips from my side, but Wade is the expert at it. But first and foremost, Wade, how you doing, buddy?
Doing good. Happy Friday. Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. Yeah, I just realized that. Okay, get your Jason Voorhees hockey masks ready. We should have wore them for the show.
Well, that'd be better than what's on camera now.
Seriously, that'd be an upgrade. So yeah, CPG office hours. As you know, I tuned in, did some comments. How was that with Luke?
It was good. It was first debut episode. If you didn't, those of you listening, watching live or later, Luke Abbott, my boss and CEO of V-Driven, and I started a midweek podcast called CPG Office Hours. This week was our first episode. It'll be Wednesdays at 12 p.m., 3 p.m. Eastern. And we talked a lot about UNFI this week and a couple other things, and just a kind of an extension of our master classes and just community things that we do at V-Driven. And yeah, it was good. I'm glad you tuned in. Appreciate the support, and it was good to see some familiar faces. And it was a little different. We're using a little different Riverside instead of StreamYard, so there's some nuances there that I have to get used to and all that stuff. But keeps me on my toes. It's like Google Meets instead of Microsoft Teams and Zoom. It's like going back and forth. So how the differences are between them. It's just kind of remembering riding a bike. So
yeah, exactly. What stood out to me was that it was cool that you brought in people as you guys were doing the show. So I know you had the French squirrel woman, Sydney yep. Carms, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she was on, and I saw Gavin on there, and I was doing stops and doing sales in LA, so I wasn't tuning in every minute, but I probably caught about half or 3/4 of it. And I think you guys also went like overtime more than an hour.
I think our intent is to be closer to 45 minutes. The goal is to keep it during lunch hour for those on the West Coast, and keep it tight so that just part of the day. And good stuff.
Yeah, it was really good. And obviously the brain power and the between Luke and you,
most of that's coming from Luke. I'm just it's more the face and the voice from me. The brain power is coming from Luke, but
the brain and the bronze. Cool.
Exactly.
So make sure to people just to tune in Wednesdays 12 o'clock 3 o'clock Eastern every Wednesday. LinkedIn Live. Mm-hmm. Great show. CPG office hours, right?
Yep.
Cool. So some laundry list items that we're going to be talking about here. Not going to spend too much time on them because we want to leave as much time as possible for the topics that we're going to be talking about. And Hank, I'll answer that question just in a second once we get through all the stuff here. So number one, we're the number one rated CPG podcast in the world. Make sure to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcast. If you would like to sponsor our show, we're going to be announcing a large ongoing sponsor starting in July. That's something that Wade and I are working on here with a great organization. So that's going to be hopefully coming online by July. August is going to be the time frame for that. But if you'd like to sponsor a single episode, you can do that by emailing cpgvibes100@gmail.com. And then we also have our backwall sponsors, which is in no particular order. Feel Free, which answers your question, Hank. That's one of the brands that I sell. Melting Forest, and also Dream Makers with Jeff Church. If you want to be part of his accelerator, then you can reach out to Jeff Church just via LinkedIn. And he has, I think, not too many openings left. if you like to build your brand, learn, do a boot camp, learn from different CPG pros across finance, operations, marketing. He has all the experts on board, and you could learn a lot in his accelerator. And then we have our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@CPG Vibes, and it pretty much goes live within a day. I think for the podcasting, Wade, like for Apple Podcasts and Spotify, it's going live within a couple hours after
and
we click the end button on our live show.
I was a
So
little behind on YouTube, but we're caught back up. The Master Series we did last week is live and up there now, so we're caught up now with the last few shows. I was a little bit behind, but we are absolutely caught up now. So
no problem. With how much is on your plate, the fact that it was uploaded within the same 5-7 days, I'm grateful for that because you're a busy guy. So yeah. So and also just the Master Series last week. I mean, we love doing we love like going back to our roots, right, and doing just the show with me and Wade and talking and no script, just chat and talking about different pertinent topics in the CPG. But also, it's great to have on guests, especially legendary guests that know a ton about the industry. And so, if you didn't catch it last week, we had on a few different guests, and we had Chris Hunter, we had Mike Fata, and I'm trying to remember the third because and we had a Nick. It wasn't Jake, it was Nick, and then we had a fourth,
Kara
and we had
from
Kara
Greenspoon.
and Kara the Green Spoon. So a little bit out of it today. So yeah, we had great guests on representing from brokers to brands to investment and CPG to brands in Canada. We had the whole enchilada in one show, and so make sure to watch that episode on YouTube or on Apple Podcast. Cool. And then any other comments here before we get to our topics? Let's see. Hank, have you shared how you came to start selling Feel Free? Missed that till now. Okay, that's a good opening question.
Sure.
So the short story, which is usually going to be a long story, is that when I was running Genius Juice, a brand that I started back in 2014, I hired someone in 2018, and he was working with Feel Free. And he started with Feel Free in 2020. So he worked with me from 2017, 18 until about 2022, when I had to unfortunately let him go because we were struggling by that time. And so right around 2020, when the company started Feel Free, he joined them, and they were in their infancy. Now they're doing tens, if not hundreds of millions in revenue. But when he started with them, they were obviously very, very small. And he told me about them. I was tracking them, following them. I tried the product. I liked the product a lot, the Kava Kratom shot. And then once I folded up Genius Juice, I was looking for other opportunities part-time. And he told me about it, and I just joined them. So it came from one of my ex-employees of Genius Juice. That's how I started with them. And, for those that don't know, you basically sell convenience, liquor stores, all the places I hang out all day, smoke shops. And those are the clients for Feel Free. Those are the stores that carry it. We're also in Circle K nationally, which is cool. And I know that they are hiring for Feel Free in certain regions of the country because the brand is growing exponentially. So if you're looking for part-time sales, full-time sales, I know they have some job openings there, and I'm happy to make an introduction and try to get your foot in the door. So that's that.
Nice.
Any other comments here? Let's see. Great network. That's cool. And then we also have Gavin, who obviously was on your show. And I remember listening on CPG on office hours that he has brought Be Amazing into 5,000 stores.
I feel like it's 3,000, but Gavin, I could be wrong. Gavin, put it in the chat what the number is. I feel like it's 3,000, but it's a bit. But the bottom line is real quick growth. I mean, it's a unique. I don't know. Have you had a chance to try it?
Yes, I tried it at Expo. I believe.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the product. I mean, it's it's certainly innovative.
And he sent it to us, right?
Yeah. It's great stuff. So yeah, I'm sure he'll put it in. He'll put it in at some point. But
yeah, it has like superfoods in there, has greens in there, and it tastes great at the same time. So it's a hard combination for it to be healthy and taste great. But yeah, so that's huge growth, and I think he's now the director of sales There we
Right.
go. End of October,
By the
5
end
to
of October.
6,000.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're both right. You're right in the future, looking in the future. I'm probably
Exactly.
more accurate now. So, yep.
Exactly right. Cool. All right. Well, let's transition to I guess the topics. And I think there was a post by Luke this morning about the update on the UNFI system outage. So I don't think this has to be a really long topic to talk about because it's being resolved. But for those that have been under a rock and not seen in the CPG world, UNFI had a system outage. There was some kind of security breach that happened. Again, if anyone has any more details beyond that, please post or Wade, jump in anytime. And then because of that outage, they were not able to fulfill deliveries. So when you go to the UNFI heavy accounts, right, like Whole Foods as a big example, I went there on Wednesday looking for my A2 milk, and it was completely out. I looked for what was it? A Olipop. It was out. So it's really interesting. Someone made a post on LinkedIn where you can tell what are the fast moving products,
Right.
right? If it's completely out, and the ones where the shelves are full, like, that means that it hasn't sold in the last week or two, and UNFI didn't have to deliver. So that was happening this week, and there were outages. I mean, the basics, the staples: milk, eggs, butter, some of the more popular green juices, right? The Evolutions and all those guys, or some other ones, they were completely out. Eggs were completely out, kind of going back to deja vu back in late last year.
Right.
And then Luke with V Driven posted this morning that it has been restored, and they have also EDI backup, so people can bill them again. That's really important that brands can bill them for the orders. And they are starting to backfill the orders from last week. So I guess from what I understand, Wade, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll go to you, is that the orders from last week leading up to the weekend, they were not filled. Usually they should have been shipped this week, the next few days, and they were not filled because of that system outage that started last Thursday or Friday. So that's what I know on my side.
Yeah, and I think I'm looking at the post. And I'll put it in here. Everybody, if they want to look at a little bit more details or more specific here, I'll put this in. But yeah, there's a number of things going on, right? I mean, they're just started, I think, in the last day or so, that receiving's back to normal, so they can receive everything. And shipping is just starting to return to normal today and this weekend. And then EDI should be back up and running sometime this weekend. I don't think it's quite yet, or it wasn't earlier on today. And I think, Luke mentions someone, he obviously didn't refer to exactly who that was, but it's some issues with inventory piling up they don't need because of some of the auto orders tied to last week's deliveries for shipping, and that's not necessarily what they need now. I know I'm not divulging anything because they posted this on their socials, I believe. Jimbo's, where I used to work, one of their back rooms with the inventory that was on hand, showing that, because they were very transparent on their socials and via their email, that, hey, our supplier UNFI suffered this outage, and you're going to see some holes on the shelf. And then they've been updating. I think 2 or 3 times they've updated. The update that I saw, I think, on their Instagram was a picture of the back room, and what I told some people earlier was that it reminded me of COVID time, when so much freight was coming in, they just couldn't. I mean, literally, it was all hands on deck trying to work that freight because there was so much coming in, and I think that's kind of what you're experiencing now. Is obviously the shelves are empty, so you're ordering to get things filled back up, which is in some ways it's good because you rotated out some of the products that were on the shelf, but on the other hand, as far as being able to operationally handle that at store level, it's pretty significant because you're probably doubling or even tripling the size of your normal order. So the labor needed to put that on the shelf is pretty significant. And I know you said that when you think of things being over, one of the things that we talked about on office hours, people need to think about is the ripple effect, right? So, everything's coming in. I mentioned the operational impact as far as how that's going to take some work to execute at retail level, but then the supply chain working down, you're going to have, the automated ordering, and all those things are just really going to be wonky these first few weeks, trying to, both on the buy side, at the supplier level, but also at, the retailers that have computer assisted ordering. There's going to be these fluxes where nothing sold, then all of a sudden it did sell, and it's just going to be all over the place. So I think the advice we've been giving everyone, of the brands we worked with, but I'd also encourage retailers, obviously, it has to be really looked at manually more so than ever. We've always said on the retail side, computer assisted ordering is fantastic, but you still have to look at it. You can't just let it go without looking at it. Now more than ever, you really have to look at it. And if you're a brand and you start getting POs, you really should scrutinize those to the nth degree to make sure, if it looks too good to be true, it probably is. And so the last thing you want to do is ship out some huge PO that's just inflated because of, these ordering systems and the algorithms associated with such. So yeah, lots to think about.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember I'm getting, post-traumatic stress on the COVID times where they'd be completely out, then they do a really large order, and then they get in all the product, and then they have to put a lot of it in the back, and then there's a risk of spoilage, right? Because if you have a short shelf life, and for a period of time during COVID, our shelf life was, 90 days or 120 days before we transitioned to overseas manufacturing close to the source for our coconut products. So I think the key word, like I was thinking of that word when you said it, is the ripple effect.
Yeah.
The ripple
Domino
effect
ripple.
for, I think that's a great term, and it perfectly describes what happened, where it's not only affecting the brands, right, with order fulfillment and having to do larger orders, or their product not making it to shelf, so there's a lapse in sales, to the stores not having products on shelf, to the employees having to rush when all the products come in and refill the shelf, to the customers, right, that can't find it, and so they're going elsewhere. I mean, I went to Whole Foods and I couldn't find my Alexandre A2 milk, so I went to Sprouts because Sprouts is KeHE, right? And I know that. Other customers, I mean, they don't know that.
Right.
But I'm like, yeah, I'm the expert in CPG. I'm going to go to the KeHE stores. I'm going to go to Mother's, which does KeHE a lot, and I'm going to go to Sprouts. And so I found it at Sprouts, and there was no out of stock issues. I found my eggs at Sprouts. So it affects, and then like there's a post, a comment here from also Derek Gould, big fan of CPG Vibes, that also demos. So anyone that had demos set up and they were planning to have product on shelf while demoing to move it out, right? Now there was nothing on shelf. So yeah, we haven't really seen anything like this in the last 3 to 4 years,
Right.
since COVID. And then the question that I have is, how do they prevent this from happening again? Because it happened once where someone, again, my understanding is someone tried to get into the system that shouldn't have been there. And because of that person getting in the system, or whoever it was, a hacker or something, UNFI had a preventative measure, a security measure to shut everything down so that data wasn't leaked and someone didn't hack in. And so how can we prevent that from happening again, not only with UNFI, but how about all the other distributors that are out there? The other post that I also saw is that the more DSD distributors benefited off of that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember seeing a post from, I forget which one, whether it was High Touch or it was one of them. Maybe, I think it was Rainforest. It was Rainforest in New York. Obviously, UNFI covers nationally, right? And Rainforest said, hey, have you heard about the outages? Well, we have the product in stock, whatever product you need that's going to Whole Foods or Independence or whoever in New York and the tri-state area. So hit us up. We can deliver to you right away. And so they actually brought in more people, right? Rainforest and all these DSDs to handle the increased demand and more product because they couldn't get it elsewhere. So it's very, very interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, I think, to how to prevent it from happening again, I can't answer that question, but I can assure you, I would think that the major players are this is a wake up call, right? Like if it could happen to them, it could happen to me. So I'm sure there's a lot of internal meetings happening right now to make sure systems are in place, or going over what the SOP is if something like this should happen again, or happen to someone that didn't other than UNFI, whether it's KeHE or someone else. Like what do we do, and how do we react, how do we respond, how do we recover, all those things. I would think that it's just kind of it's like the fire alarm drill or something like that. What happens? How do we act to it? So Gavin put a post up here that retailers being loaded up on previous orders that were submitted. This is what Luke posted. But challenging thing with that is you might only need 25% of that load. The other 75% might be slower movers that are just to fill a shelf. It'll be interesting to see how UNFI handles shipping that product back if the retailer is hung with those items. So, and it goes back to, I think, shipping product back and all these things. I think, as I mentioned, a lot of things over the last week were done manually, whether it was by hand, checking invoices, and in some cases, I'm guessing receiving. So, and I know we talked about it on office hours. I think just in general, the deduction piece, be prepared to look at what anything that's happened over the last 2 weeks. I would go through with a fine tooth comb, because manual, again, when you think about the ripple effect, the domino effect of stores possibly receiving things manually as opposed to electronic invoicing, as opposed to just flowing through automatically. There's just, when you eliminate that automation that people are used to, and you have to go back to ways, quite frankly, there's probably a lot of people who have never had to manually check an invoice or receive something. And so the opportunity for error is going to be significantly increased. And I think, whether it's receiving, like the example that's given here, or, something being shipped back that, hey, a week from now, 2 weeks from now, hey, we got 3 cases of this, we didn't need it, we're sending it back. The shrink potential, the spoilage potential, all those things can work their way through the system. So lots to keep an eye out as this thing, gets back. So
yeah, exactly. And when you think about the most popular items, it's dairy to me, right? It's the eggs, it's the milk.
I can't remember who posted a picture, but it was obviously a dairy case, and I think there might have been like literally one row of yogurt, but the rest of the case was entirely bare. Literally, like you could lay in any shelf on the case; it was completely bare. So.
Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, that's what I saw in my local Whole Foods, a couple Whole Foods, because I shopped at a few of them. But the point that I was making is that it's a double whammy, right? Because you have dairy is one of the most popular items, and you couldn't get in stock, and it sells out fast because stores don't order that much of it. They don't want to have too much on hand. And then went completely out, and now the stores are ordering, trying to get it back in, and then it comes in, and maybe they get too much,
right?
And now they're stuck with a lot, and then something may risk, and actually there might be spoilage, right? If you get too much of dairy in. And then one other thing that I want to point out to brands that are using EDI, and I think at this point it's required.
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah. I remember when I started with UNFI, like we were emailing the invoices. It was like UNFI W it was like invoices at UNFI W, UNFI E. It was all these like different email addresses. There was UNFI West, there was UNFI East. I think it's all merged now. I'm not sure what's going on, but now it's all EDI based, right? Which is the best way to do it. It goes right into the system, and it's received without any error. If you're a brand, I would make damn sure that they received your invoices, since there was a time when EDI was down part of last week, all of this week. So if you sent invoices in for products you sent to their warehouse, I would email your SRM or email the accounting of UNFI. They're usually pretty good about this, and say, hey, I sent in this invoice number, then this invoice number. Did you receive it? Please confirm. And if you don't hear back, they're probably overloaded. And I don't know if you can resubmit on EDI, but maybe it's best to check with accounting for that. So we'll see.
Yeah, this comment from Gavin is good too. The Whole Food shopper might think it's a store issue and go to another Whole Foods. They don't understand what you do as far as the different suppliers. But I think, I think that's one of the reasons why Jimbo's was so transparent. It's, hey, this isn't us. We're doing everything we can to work through this, but just communicating to their customers, which Jimbo's is exceptional with to begin with. But just being really clear that, hey, this is a bigger issue, and the last thing you as a retailer want during something like this is for your customers to think that, oh, this store doesn't know what they're doing or something like that, when it's obviously something out of your control. Using the example of Whole Foods and Sprouts, it might encourage someone that's a Whole Food shopper, such as yourself, to go to Sprouts. And once they're at Sprouts, they're like, oh, I like this store, and potentially some impact on their ongoing business. So there's a lot to unpack there operationally as far as that goes. So
Yep, exactly right. And I will say that there's another comment, and then I'll talk about just with UNFI and how they're handling this. That's something we didn't really address yet. Are they handling it well? Is it not well? But one more comment from Gavin. He has some great. He's on a roll. He's on a roll today. Gavin Conkle says might open some eyes now in the typical unified KE contracts to be the primary have to account for a certain percentage of majority of the business. So like UNFI is going to be mandating in the contract that you order this much from us, the rest comes from DSD, and it kind of goes back and forth. I mean, it's still like a system where there's a high dependency on these distributors and they cannot be replaced. Um, Someone else, I mean, I know that Pod Foods is looking to take some of that business away with their model, which is, I think, a great model, but they're not there yet as far as coverage because Unify and KE, they have a 15, 20-year head start, right? On all this, they have all the systems in place. They have all the distribution centers in place. And if you think about it, Unify, which I still feel, I mean, is a great distributor. I really like Unify. K is not bad either, right? But Unify I feel is superior personally. That's just my personal experience. Everyone has different experiences when running their brand. But Unify is delivering, 4 to 5 days a week at their top retailers, 4 to 5 days a week, which really prevents outages and issues, and they're typically on time. And then my experience when they were ordering from us at Genius Juice is they always picked up, or very commonly picked up, almost never missed a delivery or a pickup or delivery. And they always ordered the correct, they usually order the correct amount, usually a 3 week running average. And then if I had a promotion coming up or something like that, I would notify my SRM and say, hey, in Unify Aurora and the Whole Foods Colorado region, we have this big promotion. So instead of ordering 500 cases, just order 700 and I'll guarantee it, right? So like there's stuff you have to do manually with your SRM and the people ordering from you, especially if there's promotions or if you feel there's going to be seasonality and there's going to be a slowdown, like in the wintertime, if you feel that your cold pressed juice is not going to do as well or your almond milk's not going to do as well, tell them to lower the order to prevent spoilage. So these are all like kind of getting on tangents. But I will say that Unify, from what I've seen, has done a class job in handling this, right? I feel like they've done a great job given how difficult this situation is. They've been transparent. They've been backfilling orders. They're telling people to resubmit invoices on EDI. They're most likely, again, I don't work with Unify personally because I don't have a brand anymore, but I imagine that they're reaching out to their brands saying, make sure that you have the orders ready. We need more, or make sure to submit your invoices. So I've heard these things through the grapevine that Unify, given the challenging situation, has handled it well, recovered pretty quickly, given how big of a outage this has been. And it looks like products are returning to the shelf starting end of this week and next week. So given it, I think they did a pretty good job. I mean, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I think so, and I think it's unprecedented, so it's something that you kind of learn on the fly, and I think the way they've handled it, reacted to it, communicated, I think for the most part has been good as far as that goes. A couple of comments here. The one from Gavin we have on the screen with regards to contracts. I know in my past where I've dealt with these contracts, typically. He's right. Sometimes it's a percentage of the business, but sometimes it's just a dollar amount, right? So as long as I hit this dollar amount, I get this price. But if I drop below that, in other words, I'm committing to over the course of a year that I'm going to buy X amount of volume. But if I buy Y amount of volume, my price goes up a little bit, percentage wise. So the discount. The other thing that Hank's comments, isn't it one sided to think if your systems were hacked and it affected your ops that a distributor would charge you and impact your money, but when it happens to them, you're not owed anything. Well, that's yeah, that's talking about deductions and things like that. Yeah, we can open up that rabbit hole real quick. Regional distributors benefit the most from this, and I don't disagree with that. I think the challenge there is because of the way it happened, how quickly it happened, when it happened. Again, this happened, I think, Thursday, Friday last week. It didn't really give time for anyone to react. It's not like you could pull in as a regional, you could pull in extra inventory. You could certainly ramp up deliveries. You could do things like that. But as far as, had it happened and you had a week or so notice that you could pull in something extra, schedule extra deliveries, it's just, and now here we are a week later and for all intents purposes, things are almost back to normal. From the sounds of it, the opportunity was very short lived but it was an opportunity nonetheless to show those people that, hey, there's some benefits to using a regional, and the hands-on approach, and the national guys are bigger, and it's harder for them to have the personal touch that these regional guys can. So I think a lot of them, use that as an opportunity to, hey, remember us, we're the guys that are here. And when you're in a jam, you can help out. So, I think there's some marketing opportunities as far as that goes. So.
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty apparent at my local Whole Foods where I'm in Southern California. So it's handled by High Touch, right? High Touch dominates as far as DSD in Southern California for Whole Foods, Mother's, Erewhon, Bristol Farms, Gelson's, and there's a couple others I'm probably missing, Jimbo's, right? And when I went to Whole Foods, I know the brands that High Touch carries, right? Because I visit them, I've seen their warehouse. They're good guys. They carry Genius Juice for the entirety of my career for 9 years plus. And the products that they carry were in stock. The products that were UNFI were out of stock. It was very, very apparent. And so, so like that's why these stores always have, they diversify, right? They diversify where they have, the UNFIs and the KHEs and all those guys, and the bigger guys, they have the dairy delivery people. And then they have more of the like really, really fast DSD kind of stuff where they come in. Then they have Evolution, right, where they come in on their own and they just put it right on the shelf. So it's good to have diversity, just in case one distributor goes down. At least your entire store isn't completely in flames, right?
But and Jimbo's was kind of the anomaly as far as that goes, in my experience, because they had a lot of products that were interchangeable between UNFI and KHE,
Which
and
is very smart.
And in some cases, Foundation and High Touch and so on. They were the exception, because in my past, no pun intended, your eggs were in one basket. I bought this item from this distributor. I bought that item from that distributor. There wasn't crossover. In other words, I had my primary distributor, I had my specialty distributor, I had my regional, but there wasn't any cross-pollination as far as buying items. If I bought a box of Cheerios or a jar of Jif, that's who I bought it from. These people didn't carry it. And so I think some of those larger, especially on the conventional side, which, we don't really talk about when we think of UNFI, we think of natural. Don't forget that they also have the legacy super value. So they are a conventional distributor as well. So this impacted them on that side as well. So when you think we're talking about Bristol and all these people, we're not thinking about the conventional side of the business, or we really aren't talking about that side of the business where they were impacted. And I'm guessing wouldn't have had the luxury of buying those conventional items through another distributor, because to make that happen quick, if they're not set up for it, it's not like they could pick up the phone and call, a distributor that they're not currently doing business with or something to make them react. So yeah, just a lot to take in there.
Yep, exactly. And one other comment here, not to belabor this too much further, because we don't leave time for the other topic, is Derek Gould, even long-term, what if someone like Alex goes to Sprouts, Mother's, and winds up preferring that experience? I will say that customers are not as fickle as you think. If they like a store and it's their neighborhood store, if you go in there once, so I'm kind of pushing back on this comment in a way, because you go into a store and they're out of certain things, right? Or eggs or milk and maybe like whatever, Rebel or Remedy or whatever juices. I'll go to another store, but I was already doing that anyway. Like I was going to Whole Foods and Sprouts and Bristol, and I'm the kind of shopper where I don't have like a push basket, right? I only use that for Costco because everything's so freaking huge in Costco. But when it comes to Whole Foods or Sprouts, I always have a hand basket, right? Not a cart, because I get certain things from certain retailers and I go to other stores and get other things that are carried there, or maybe it's in stock, or they have the flavor at this store, Sprouts, Whole Foods doesn't have the flavor, or vice versa. So I think a lot of, I don't see it as a lost customer. You may lose them for that day, but people are pretty firm, and we're creatures of habit. We're going to go back to that store the next week. Now, if that store is out for a month, that's a different story. Then you'll start shopping somewhere else. But
I agree with what you're saying, but I also see Derek's, again, coming from a retailer background. I also understand that's what I think I touched on this earlier in the conversation is that I you're already shopping. You have your pet. You're going here. You're going here. You're going here. I think what Derek's thinking about is that person that maybe they shop at, uh, Whole Foods because it's a mile from their house. Maybe Sprouts is 2 miles and they never
That's
go
true.
there.
That's
And
true.
it's the first time they actually go in there. It's like, oh wow, I'm going to come in here more often. And that's the kind of thing I think Derek's pointing out that I as a retailer would be worried about is my shelves are empty. I can't do anything about it. I have a loyal shopper that comes in here all the time and don't really give a person a reason to go across the street. But now I have given them a reason and they go in. Maybe they haven't been in before. It's been a year or two. And it's like, wow, the prices are fair. They're in stock. I need to come back in here. And so it's just opening that door, that window a little bit
Yeah,
that
correct.
might
Yeah, open.
encourage
Yeah.
someone to check something else out. So,
Yeah, you're right. And I can see that. I can see both sides of the coin here,
yeah.
both sides, right? Both perspectives. The smaller stores that order from UNFI also were in a world of hurt, I feel.
Yeah.
Like the Follow Your Heart. I don't know if you know this store. They're in
Yep.
Canoga Park, or there's other ones, right? That are smaller natural stores, like they're co-ops, right? They're co-ops,
Yep.
and they're assigned to, and with co-ops, it's either what the two, Infra and NCG. There's like two different ones, and
Right.
usually one assigns themselves to one of those two. And testing my knowledge, Infra is KHE, NCG is UNFI. I think I have that right. So if you're an NCG networked store and you're ordering like everything from UNFI, and the problem is you have to get an order minimum, like you said about 10 minutes ago. So you're ordering a shitload of stuff from UNFI to make that minimum because you don't have as much buying power being a small store. So I feel like those stores, we didn't really talk about that and we have to move on, but I think they got hurt, because they have to order from UNFI to hit their minimum, and now they're out of stock. And if someone goes to that neighborhood store and it's out, there's going to be more Whole Foods and Sprouts around than that
Yep.
one store that they go out of their way to get their items. So anyway, like we talked about, a lot of ripple effect here.
Yep.
Trade show tips, and I put in the title from Wade to put the pressure, the pressure off me and put it on you.
No
So,
pressure at all. No, and I think we talk about tips, and you can go back. It's funny because I was talking to Jason Hostetler, who will be on our show next week from Bueller's, making his debut. And actually, we should just plug that real quick. If you're listening now, we're going to have a buyer's episode next week with Robert Johnson from New Seasons, Kenny Hausman from Fresh Time, and Jason Hostetler from Bueller's Foods, which is he's going to correct me. I think there are 13 or 14 stores in my old style. I spent 20 years with that company in North Central Ohio. Conventional leaning specialty. They do a really good job with perishables, and but also Jason was at the KHE show this week. But anyways,
14.
I was talking. Yeah, 14. I was going to say it was 13 when I left. 14. Jason was at the KHE show this week. I was talking a little bit with him about, in preparation for next week. But as far as food shows go, just talking in general, not just tips. It's just we're in food show season, and so I think when I Alex and I were texting a little bit earlier, and we really don't prepare for the show, but we're saying, hey, what are we going to talk about this week? And I said, well, it's food show season, and and so here we are. And right, KHE's this week. BevNet was this week. Coming up real quickly is Fancy Food. I'm sure UNFI has something in here somewhere.
Sweets and Snacks was a few weeks ago.
Sweets and Snacks. We've got Newtopia about 6 to 8 weeks away, so on and so forth. And just really, some of the talking with our brands and, strategizing with, what shows do I need to attend? What shows should I pass on? And I think that's kind of where I was going. But as far as tips from, and I think it all just packages together, right? As far as what, as a brand, where to invest, what makes sense for you as a brand is to participate in, to pass on, and then how do you get the most once you're there? And I think, like I said, we had a great episode a couple weeks before Expo with Kenny and Robert talking a lot about that. And just generally speaking, how to do it. And I think one of the biggest challenges in talking to brands, what they want obviously is to try and get pre-commitments from buyers to that they're going to come to the booth at this time, or, that they, I can assure you that this buyer from this category will stop by this booth, during this window. And it's so hard to get them to commit to that right now. It's just, buyers, they don't want to they don't want to, right? They just don't want to commit. They just want to go, they want to walk the show, they want to do their thing. And then beyond that is how to follow up and all those things. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to talk a little bit about here today. So touching on what shows to participate in, I know a lot of these smaller regional shows brands have had a lot of success at, right? Because they're selling shows. They're actually shows that some of these smaller retailers that maybe you're not going to hit with a category review, or maybe you're just not going to be able to check in on a regular basis. You can touch base with those at the show because they attend these shows. So I think it's always beneficial to do your homework as these regional shows, where they at, what retailers attend, what DCs are they pulling out of that, service these regional shows, and then looking at that expense, because oftentimes it's a fraction of the cost of the national shows. And you can touch a lot of people there and walk out with orders. They actually are buying shows, where some of the larger shows are more show and tell, right? It's like typically you're not walking out of Expo West with you might make a connection, but you're not necessarily walking out with an order for X amount of cases, not normally. Where these shows are indeed buying shows that you can sell product and work deals, case stack deals, negotiate back and forth. Hey, if you buy X amount of cases, I'll give you this or that. And so I think that's one of the things we wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I don't know, Alex, if you have a lot of experience with that, as far as, that back and forth with some of the smaller regional shows, or no?
Honestly, no. That's why I have your name in the title. Because I've never, and it's very rare, but I've never been at a UNFI or KHE. I've walked it, but I've never actually been a brand selling on the floor, believe it or not. So well, I can't add anything to that.
That's okay. That's what Gavin said. He's talking about the show coming up in Vegas. He's already got his anchors for 4 or 5 West Coast DCs, and his goal is to push for 200 new indies. So that's, from a strategy standpoint, we always talk about it. You have to get that anchor count, but then the doors are open for all the smaller accounts to go in. And these shows, like this example that Gavin gave here, is a perfect way to touch those indie accounts. That he's more than likely not going to go door to door trying to sell those 200 accounts, but by being at the show for a day, 2 days, he's going to be able to touch those 200, sell them live there, and walk away with those orders. The alternative is to do something like a program like a New at KHE or something like that, where you get the product in, and then you're kind of reliant on the sales team to take care of that for you. This is you touching those people yourself, establishing contacts, getting their email information so that you can follow up down the road. It's just it makes a lot of sense. The regional shows, I think, are underestimated and oftentimes undervalued as far as when you're looking at your plan. Everybody thinks Expo, they think Newtopia, they think fancy food, but some of these regional shows, don't sleep on those, especially if it's a region that's important to you, to your business. Whether you're talking about Southern California, you're talking about a certain DC here on the East Coast. Pay attention to those shows. And then buyer outreach, we can talk a little bit about that too. And I know you have experience with that and working at shows. So I'll let you start so I can take a drink of water.
Sure. Yeah, no, we're on a roll. You're on a roll. I think that you went 7-8 minutes just straight. But you set a record on CPG Vibes. Yeah, I was going to say, and we're going to have a special guest hopping on for a couple minutes here towards the end of the show to make a quick announcement, plug, and update about what's going on in his world. So that's a surprise. Taking a page out of the office hours, right? Just bringing people on. So the bigger shows, Expo West, Newtopia Now, which I've not been to yet, but I think I'm going to go this August, right? It's on August. It's more buyer outreach, and it's going to the bigger buyers, the ones that manage, and of course you can find independents there. You can find stores, or the owners that have like 1 store, 2 store, 3 store, purchasing managers with 4 stores, 5 stores. But at Expo West, especially Newtopia, those 2, you'll find bigger buyers because they're out on the hunt for innovation. They're also meeting with their brands, and they have a stacked schedule. And that's something that Wade has spoken about ad nauseum, right? Many episodes, that respect the buyers where they're there. They have set meetings. They have a stacked schedule. They are meeting with all the brands, a lot of brands that that are in their stores, and they want to meet with them for promotions or updates or new SKUs or just a meet and greet, just to keep on building the relationship. So they're probably stacked 70-80% just for that kind of stuff. And then the rest of the time, depending on the buyer, the rest of the time they're walking the show looking for innovation.
Right.
So when you're a brand, you have to be really careful around these individuals, where you don't want to bother them, but you still want to get on their radar. And if you have a booth, yeah, try to bring them over, right? And they're walking the show. That's what they're there for. But if you're just walking the floor and you have a cooler like I did in 2014, 15, 16, and 17, be respectful, be careful. Just say something very quick. Read the room. If they're, shifty-eyed or looking around, like they're trying to like focus on what they're doing, just say, hey, I'm Alex. Like, here, my brand is this, or I'm Gavin. Would be amazing. I don't want to bother you. You can keep on going with your day. Just want to introduce myself, say hello. I'll reach out to you by email a week or two after Expo or Newtopia. But then, if you have a booth, it's good to have a scout and have someone that's out there bringing buyers back to your booth. And that really benefited us in 2019. I've said that a few times, where in 2019, Genius Juice was exhibiting in the North Hall, a brand new hall, and we were on the corner booth right across from Once Upon a Farm. And we brought over Albertsons Vaughn's Pavilions. We brought over Costco. We brought over Target, Walmart. We didn't really pursue Walmart. Our brand wasn't really a fit for them, and they weren't a fit for us. And then Sprouts. And then we did meet with Whole Foods briefly, and also Wegmans. We didn't get into Wegmans, but we met with them. And so like all that happened because we had people and scouts, or I would leave the booth while my team was running the booth. And I would find people in the crowd and say, hey, I'm Alex with Genius Juice. Our booth is this. Swing on by. I don't want to interrupt what you're doing right now with your meeting, but swing on by later on if you have some time. So there's like a certain etiquette.
Right.
And I always say this, right? Again, this is the beauty of the show, where Wade and I, he was on the buyer side for many years. I was on the brand side for many years. There's a certain way to handle the etiquette with buyers, and Wade also has experience in what to do and what not to do from the brand side, how to treat them. But I would say my only advice is just be very fast. Just say what you need to say. Don't pitch them on the floor about the product and the story and the sourcing, and they don't have time for that. They're not going to listen. They are running around like a chicken with their head cut off. Just make it quick. Give your card. Don't give the product. They don't want to be carrying around products on them. And hopefully you can meet up with them after the show. So I guess that's all I have to add on that.
Yeah, and I was going to say, I know we have someone that is in the green room right now, but what I would say is that we'll touch on more of that next week. We have 3 people on that are currently in those roles and actively attending trade shows as buyers. So let's ask them some of that. We'll follow up next week on more of those.
Perfect. So we're going to bring this gentleman on. He's a good friend of ours, good friend of mine, and he also worked with us with Genius Dreams on the crowdfunding campaign. That's what we do. We build crowdfunding platforms and campaigns on WeFunder and also on Start Engine. And his is on fire. It's Mark Snacks. He's at 157,000 within like a week or a week and a half, something like that. And he'll correct me on the timeline, but it's been quick, and he can still invest. Their goal is $250,000, and he can go above that, but I won't speak for him anymore. I'm going to bring him on here for a few minutes to talk about the campaign and anything else he'd like to talk about. Mark Samuel, Mark Snacks. How you doing, brother?
What up?
What's up,
I'm
Mark?
driving, so I'm going to look ahead.
Good. Safety
how
first.
you doing?
Good.
We are doing good. So talk to us about the campaign, the progress. We've seen the posts and loving the goals you're hitting. So tell us more about it for anyone who would like to get in on it and invest in Mark Snacks.
Yeah, no, I probably won't even pitch like that. You know what I am going to say though?
Sure.
I'm going to say that I'll probably write a cool little recap when it's all said and done, right? Because some people have asked the questions that they should, like, why'd you choose it? Why this direction? I think there's a lot to be said about referring folks to you because of your involvement, how how effective that's been. I think there's things that I'm going to be extremely transparent about, even stuff I've said to you offline about like what I kind of don't like about it, which is always good, right? You got to know what's hiding behind all of these things that we don't know much about, especially when someone sees it and they say, wait, it's working. Like, because I mean, I don't, I can't necessarily say like, oh, well, this is working. I just can say it's doing what I prayed it would do. But as I said in my last post, I literally had no expectations, which is super helpful. Have zero expectations. And that way, when it goes from 0 to 1, good. It went from 1 to 2, good. Goes from 3, and and it's just somewhat working. Then great. Everybody's happy. So there's I've just sort of put that in a bow for you.
For sure. I think like I would describe WeFunder as a conduit to make it easy, a platform to make it easy for someone that believes in you and likes you, is passionate about the industry, passionate about the category you in, just to go in, and it democratizes investment. It democratizes it and makes it very easy for a person to click on your, campaign page, click invest, put in a minimum of $100 or more. And that's what I love about it. Someone doesn't have to be rich or an accredited investor to come in. And I think it also leverages your social equity. I feel very strongly about that. You've built tremendous social equity, and this is from your heart, Mark, nothing else. Like, it's just what you do. It's your lifestyle. And you've been sharing with all of us on LinkedIn for years. And then now, because they know you, they trust you, and they like following you, you're leveraging that into a brand.
I will say this, which is really cool, and I hope that it's going to at least give some other folks an opportunity to look into it with more optimism, which is also what I said. I'm not going to not say I haven't built some sort of goodwill over the years. I have a really amazing community. There's no doubt about it. However, of the 70 or so that have gotten involved so far, I don't know a majority of these people. Again, I'm gonna tie that into the bow of this whole summary later on. I think it's wildly important. There's a lot of folks that are online with us, even right now, that are watching from afar. I've had notes, personal notes to me about my faith. I don't mind saying that. Like, just personal notes about how I subscribe to faith in some way. I don't know these people. Right? I think that's really important. And then I'll go one step further. You would think that the folks that I know, ones that many would deem successful, and I look at success totally different than probably most. Everybody has some sort of a affinity to finance when it comes to it. I don't, but that's for a separate day. They're not involved with this thing. I'm friends with a lot of these people, like friends. Like I mean, like we met, and I don't see their money coming into this thing, and I'm just being upfront. Like, but I also never expected it, and I also don't expect it. And again, it's one of these things that I really want to tie into sort of the summary, which is that's totally okay, because I'm also a huge fan of never, ever, ever tell somebody what to do with their money. And never, ever, ever expect anything from somebody. It's wildly important. And it allows you some semblance and calm, especially when it comes to something like this, when most people do have some sort of expectation. So that's another drop. By the way, I gotta go. You ever heard of Jam Bar?
Yeah.
I'm going to their little facility right now. It's right in my neck of the woods. The guy hit me up a couple weeks. So shout out to them. They're in my area. They wanted me to come check out their facility. I have no idea what, when, where, or how. I just said, you know what? I'll take 45 minutes. I'll come check you out.
I can't remember the flavor. I'm looking it up now because there's one of theirs the malt nut. I really like their malt nut. Shout
out to them.
Like that. Good to see you, Mark.
right, buddy. Take
You
care.
guys
Okay.
good?
Yep.
I
Good.
appreciate you guys, dude.
You, brother.
Seriously.
Thank you, Mark. Have a good one,
Big
man.
love. Peace.
Bye. All right. Very cool. All right. So, yeah, he was less about the pitch, but I like to, I'm a pitch man sometimes. So invest in Mark Snacks, $100 or more. Go on wefunder.com/Marks, plural, Marks Snacks, plural. And you can just Google WeFunder Mark Snacks. They are at $157,000 raised from 70 different investors. Again, minimum investment 100, max as high as you want, baby, as high as you want. And he's launching his brand in the summer, and they are kettle chips, and they're delicious. So I've heard they're delicious. I haven't tried them yet. All right, so good stuff. So next week, right? I'm just going to reiterate that, Wade, on what we have going on, or I'll pass it to you. So what's going on?
It's a buyers episode, and we'll have 3 buyers. Again, Robert Johnson, New Seasons Market, Kenny Hausman, Fresh Time, and Jason Hustetler with Bueller Foods out of Ohio. So looking forward to that. Should be fun.
Cool. That'll be June 20th, 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock Eastern, right here, CPG Vibes on LinkedIn Live. And then if you like to give us 5 stars, Apple Podcast, Spotify, make sure to do that. We'll have this podcast episode live within about an hour on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So make sure to subscribe to us, and you'll be alerted as soon as the episode is available. If you'd like to listen again for a second time, sometimes, I listen to our own episodes and I like them. Like, they're fun. They're fun. And sometimes I miss, if we're talking about something and I'm like thinking about something else that I'm going to say, which is a bad habit, or I'm looking at my other monitor for news or updates or things to talk about, I might miss part of our own episode, right? So I love re-listening to it when I'm driving or working out and all that good stuff. Just not during yoga, because it's hard to stay centered when I'm listening to CPG Vibes, right? But any part of your day, listen to us, give us 5 stars. We'll see you next week. Wade, what are you doing this weekend?
I'm just laying low. That's the plan. Just laying low.
Cool. Well, it's Father's Day.
That's right.
Yep.
Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And, I have a 2-year, not 8-month-old son. His name is Aaron, and I love him so much. He's amazing. And love my wife. Just my family's amazing. I'm a very lucky man. And so they're traveling, and they're coming back on Saturday afternoon, and then they're gonna. I didn't ask for anything. I'm not like, oh, we have to. You have to give me a new golf club, or something like that, or you have to take me out to my favorite restaurant. Like, I don't want to make demands like that. It's like, whatever everyone wants to do, I'll go along with it. Everyone needs to have fun. This is not just about me. But one thing that I'm taking my son to, I know we're a couple minutes over here, is have you heard of Blippi?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah, so Blippi is it's like a kid's entertainment guy, I guess is the way to describe it. YouTube star, social media star. He started about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and as one guy, Blippi, Blippi, and then he sold the rights to it to a big company, and he made millions of dollars. And they found a new Blippi that looks exactly like him about maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And they look exactly the same. One has facial hair, the original. The new one has no facial hair. So Blippi has concerts. He has concerts, he has songs, he has albums, he has toys, he has a whole enterprise of things under his company umbrella of Blippi. And so they're going to do a show in the Thousand Oaks at the Performing Arts Center. And I'm going to take my son, and I think my wife too. I think she's going, but she might have other plans, but I believe she's going. And all 3 of us are going to go and enjoy a Blippi concert. So if you have kids right now that are like under 10 years old, you definitely know Blippi, and I'm sure they're constantly playing in your household. He's kind of in the same bucket as Miss Rachel. Miss Rachel.
Don't know that one either.
I mean, your kids are grown, so
yeah, they're a little older. Yeah,
you're out of the knowledge pool of kid stars, right, and all that. But anyway, it's going to be fun. And then the U.S. Open for golf is also happening right now. It always is on Father's Day weekend, which is amazing. And so I'll be watching Sunday with my family. And one last thing I'll say that always sticks out to me as far as golf and Father's Day is I remember Tiger Woods. The first year when he had his son in 2008, he won the U.S. Open at Torrey Pines. It was pretty cool.
Very cool.
On
Very
Father's
cool.
Day weekend. So there you go.
Awesome.
All right, everyone. So Wade, take care, buddy. Everyone have a great Father's Day weekend. Enjoy, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.